That summer in Boston was swelteringly unbearable, the kind of humid, relentless heat that defines a city that never sleeps. I, Claire Mitchell, 31 years old, had been mentally preparing for weeks to attend my younger brother Ethan's wedding. They say a wedding is the happiest day of someone's life, a time for family to come together, to mend cracks with wine and laughter. I believed that, until I became living proof of the opposite. That morning, I put on a simple yet elegant navy dress and the heels I'd saved up to buy. I carefully prepared a wedding gift, an envelope with a $7,500 check. It was money I'd scrimped and saved for months, working late shifts, skipping my summer vacation, and passing on things I wanted, all to give Ethan something meaningful. Though I was never the favored child, I thought I could at least contribute to my brother's happiness. The ceremony took place in a historic Boston church. It was brief and tidy, with resonant organ music and enthusiastic applause. I sat toward the back, watching Ethan hold his bride's hand, smiling faintly. Despite an uneasy feeling, I felt proud. At least today we're a family, I thought. Everything changed at the reception, held at a luxurious hotel. At the check-in desk, guests received gold-embossed cards with their names in calligraphy and table numbers gleaming in metallic ink. When my turn came, the woman at the desk didn't look up, just handed me a flimsy paper badge boldly printed with "Limited Access Guest." I froze. Limited access? I thought, assuming it was a mistake. But before I could ask, my mother appeared, as if waiting for this moment. She leaned in and whispered, her voice light but sharp as a blade. "That means you don't get a meal." I went numb. I waited for her to smile, to give a playful wink signaling it was a bad joke. But no. She turned away, leaving me standing with the cold badge in my hand. It felt like being plunged into an icy lake. The sounds around me vanished, my mind blank, enveloped by humiliation. I walked into the ballroom telling myself it's a mix-up, but the truth was far crueler. I circled the tables. My name wasn't on any seating chart, no chair, no plate, no place card. I wasn't a guest, not even family, just a shadow, an ink blot they deliberately erased on this momentous day. Laughter and chatter filled the room. Ethan raised a glass. His bride leaned on his shoulder. My parents beamed for photos. I stood against the wall, hoping for a glance, an explanation, but no one noticed. They saw me. They knew I was there, but they chose to ignore me. A bitter ache rose in my chest. I thought of the envelope I'd placed on the gift table, poured from my heart. I'd given everything, only to be treated as an outsider. The cruel irony made my heart twist. I walked to the gift table, now quiet, where my plain white envelope sat alone among ornate ribboned boxes. I picked it up, opened it, and pulled out the check. My hands shook, but my voice was clear, not loud, but enough for anyone nearby to hear. "I guess you won't need this anymore." Then I turned and walked out. Chairs scraped, someone called my name. Ethan's voice snapped. My parents shouted, "Come back, Claire!" But I didn't stop. I strode out of the ballroom, the harsh sunlight hitting my face, my heart aching but my head held high. I started my car and drove off, leaving behind the lively music and applause that wasn't for me. In the rearview mirror, the hotel faded like my family, distant, cold, indifferent. That night, I couldn't sleep. The image of the cheap paper badge and my mother's whisper looped like a scratched record. I realized that moment wasn't just an incident. It was a silent declaration. "You don't belong." I cried, but the tears weren't salty. They burned, like acid on my pride. I thought of years of enduring, of being sidelined, of unconditional sacrifices, all for a seat at my brother's wedding. Yet they'd stripped it away without hesitation. In that anguish, something sparked within me. If they don't need me, they don't get to use me. It was the first time I felt in control. Not through the check, but by taking it back. Not with arguments, but with my footsteps leaving the party. I don't know if you, reading this, have ever felt like a stranger in your own family. The chill of being erased from a table or embraced where you belong is colder than any empty room. If you've been there, please share in the comments below. I couldn't imagine that after leaving the wedding in humiliation, The only response from my family wouldn't be an apology, but a string of texts full of excuses. The next morning, as the sun rose over Boston Harbor, my phone buzzed relentlessly. First, my mother. Claire, don't be so sensitive. The seating was just a logistics mix-up. Then my father. Weddings are hectic, mistakes happen. Don't ruin the family's mood over a small misunderstanding. Finally, Ethan. Sis, I didn't think it was such a big deal. I thought you'd understand. 3 messages, 3 tones, but one thing in common. No one said sorry. I sat stunned, the phone screen glaring in my hand, my heart heavy as stone. They called my public humiliation logistics? They brushed it off like my demotion to a fringe guest was just a spreadsheet error? In that moment, childhood memories flooded back. I was 8, standing in a schoolyard at the spring festival, clutching a second-place art award. I ran to show Mom, but she gave a faint smile. Ethan's got a swim meet soon. Let me focus on cheering for him. Or Thanksgivings, where I set the table and washed dishes while Ethan just sat down, the family fawning over him, praising his bright future. I never envied him. I just craved a look of recognition. But as I grew, my role became clear, a shadow next to the family's golden boy. After the wedding, I avoided their calls. They kept leaving voicemails, their tones a mix of coaxing and blame. My father even said, "Every family has conflicts. Don't be stubborn and embarrass us." Embarrass them? I laughed bitterly. The one humiliated wasn't them, it was me, the daughter erased from the family table. That night, I opened an old wooden box in my closet, filled with unsent letters and notes. I reread a shaky line I wrote at 16. I have to study harder so Mom and Dad see I'm just as worthy as Ethan. Years later, I was still trapped in that cycle, proving my worth, only to be met with indifference. And now, they wanted me to believe my public disgrace was a minor oversight. A week later, I couldn't take it anymore. I agreed to meet them at my parents' house. I walked in to find them seated in the living room, the air thick as if everyone knew they were wrong but refused to admit it. Mom spoke first, her voice even. "Claire, I'm sorry you misunderstood. Things were chaotic that day. We didn't mean to exclude you." Dad nodded. "Exactly. What family would do that to their own? It was just a mistake. You should let it go." Ethan mumbled vaguely. "I was so busy. There was so much to handle. I thought you'd get it." I listened, trying to stay calm, but rage boiled inside. No one took responsibility. They blamed circumstances, chaos, my sensitivity. I looked at them, my voice trembling but clear. "You know what hurt most? Not the cheap badge, not the lack of a meal. It was looking around the room, seeing you all clap and laugh, while no one noticed I was left out. That wasn't a mistake, it was a choice." Silence. Mom bit her lip, Dad looked away, Ethan stayed quiet. My anger erupted. I stood, my words cutting through their pretense. "I didn't ruin the wedding. You ruined this family." The room fell deathly silent. For the first time, I didn't tremble in that silence. Instead, I felt a strange relief, as if I'd finally voiced the pain haunting me for years. That night, back in my small apartment, I sat by the window overlooking the Charles River. The breeze carried a salty dampness. My heart was both empty and clear. This relationship was too broken to hide behind misunderstandings anymore. I knew I'd crossed a new threshold, no longer the enduring, sacrificing daughter vying for a seat beside the golden boy. I'd face the truth, and that harsh reality would lead to a longer battle, deciding whether to let them keep using me or to take back control of my life. If you find this story compelling, comment why. If not, comment N. I want to know if you relate to my journey because it's far from over. There's a moment in life when you look in the mirror and ask, how much have I let them take? For me, that question came on a sleepless night when the wedding still haunted me. But what surfaced wasn't the badge, it was the second car. 6 months earlier, my parents called, saying their car broke down. I had an old sedan, still in good shape, regularly maintained but rarely used since I'd bought another for work. I gave it to them, thinking it was what a daughter should do. Just for a few weeks, Dad promised. Weeks turned to months, then half a year. The car became family property by default. I'd stayed silent, telling myself, it's family, no big deal. But after the wedding's humiliation, I realized that silence was the door they'd walk through to take more. One morning, I stepped onto my balcony, watching the traffic below. The cool fall breeze contrasted with the fire igniting inside me. I grabbed my phone and called a towing company I knew. The man's voice was calm, like taking an order. Address? Plate number? We'll be there tomorrow morning. I read the details slowly, my heart pounding, not from fear but from taking charge for the first time. No asking permission, no begging. I was reclaiming what was mine. The next morning, when my phone rang, I knew who it was. Mom's voice was frantic. "Claire, someone's towing the car from the garage. What did you do?" I replied calmly, "I'm taking my car back." Dad grabbed the phone, roaring, "You think this is right? We need that car to get around. How could you be so selfish?" I bit my lip but didn't back down. This isn't about the wedding. It's about a pattern of taking advantage. For too long, you've assumed I'd sacrifice, give, stay silent. Not anymore. Silence on their end. I heard Dad's sharp breaths, Mom's sniffles. But in my heart, a strange steadiness rose. That afternoon, Ethan texted, "Sis, did you have to make it this big? It's just a car." I laughed bitterly. Just a car? To him, it was transportation. To me, it was a symbol of their assumption that I existed to provide, to compensate, to prop them up. I texted back, "A car or a check doesn't matter. It's how you see me. If I don't protect myself, I'll have nothing left." No reply. That evening, when the car was towed back, I looked at it parked neatly outside my place. For the first time in months, I felt I'd reclaimed something mine. A small but meaningful victory stirred in my heart. But alongside it, I sensed an undercurrent from my family. The phone went eerily quiet. No more accusations, no reconciliation. That silence was scarier, like a secret family meeting where I was being judged as the rebel. The next day, I ran into Aunt Susan, my mother's sister, at the supermarket. She looked at me, her eyes worried. "Claire, you've stirred up the family, but honestly, I'm glad you finally stood up." I froze. In that moment, I realized not everyone in the family was blind. Some had quietly witnessed the unfairness, waiting for me to break the silence. The car wasn't just metal and wheels. It became a symbol of moving from the sidelined daughter to someone reclaiming her place. And that scared my parents. If I could take back the car, what else might I demand tomorrow? Respect, fairness, my own agency. That Sunday evening, Dad called again, his tone softer. "Claire, you're breaking our hearts with this behavior. Families should compromise, sacrifice for each other." I replied slowly, "I've compromised my whole life, but sacrifice only matters when it's valued, not expected. I'm done being the one who gives endlessly." He went silent. I knew he understood but didn't want to admit it. That night, I opened my journal and wrote one line. Today I took back the car. More importantly, I took back myself. As I set the pen down, I felt I'd entered a new chapter. No longer the Claire who stepped back. I'd stepped forward, and I knew the real battle was just beginning. If you're moved by stories like mine and feel a connection, check out my previous videos on this channel. Some wounds feel like they've hurt as much as they can, but one revealed truth can tear them open again. I thought I'd grown used to the pain from the wedding, accepted my family's silence and excuses. But one afternoon, a few words crumbled everything like a sandcastle. The messenger was Aunt Susan, my mother's sister. We met by chance at a small roadside cafe. She looked at me, her eyes a mix of pity and unease. And after a long pause, she dropped a bombshell. "Claire, I couldn't stand watching you be deceived. I saw the original guest list. You were seated at the main table, next to your parents and Ethan. But 3 days before the wedding, your mom sent a revised list. Ethan agreed. Your name was moved to limited access guest." I went numb. Their logistics excuse vanished. No mistake, no chaos, just deliberate betrayal. They'd seen my name and crossed it out. My face burned, my heart pounding with pain and rage. I asked, trembling, "Are you sure? Could it just be a mistake?" Susan gripped my hand. "I wish it was. But I saw it with my own eyes. They did it because they thought you didn't matter. You deserve the truth." In that moment, the last fog lifted. I could no longer fool myself that they'd slipped up. They'd intentionally excluded me, and Ethan, the brother I'd protected and supported, had gone along with it. Back at my apartment, my mind reeled. Memories clicked into place. Mom's forced smile at check-in, Ethan's averted gaze as I left the ballroom. It all formed a cruel, perfect picture. I sat on the couch, staring at the blank wall, and for the first time said aloud, "They never wanted me there." The words echoed in the empty room like a knife twisting deeper into an already bleeding wound. But life doesn't pause for you to nurse your pain. Days later, I heard Ethan lost his job. The finance company he'd worked at for over 4 years suddenly cut staff. The lavish wedding, expensive honeymoon, unpaid credit card debt, it all crashed down. Family gossip spread fast. Ethan's broke. The Mitchells are in financial trouble. I sat still. Part of me wanted to shrug. Not my problem. But another part, the soft part I thought was dead, ached. My phone rang. Ethan's name flashed. I hesitated, then answered. His voice was shaky, breaking. "Claire, I don't know where to start. I lost my job. I'm drowning in debt. They've turned their backs." I stayed silent, hearing his ragged breaths. Every ounce of anger and betrayal surged, tempting me to scream, "You deserve it!" But I waited. And Ethan added, his voice cracking, "I don't need money. I just need to know what to do." Those words hit hard. For the first time in years, Ethan wasn't the golden boy basking in family favor. Gone was the arrogance of someone backed by everyone. He was just a lost, desperate man. I set the phone down, looking out the window. Boston's nighttime lights glowed, but my heart was dark. The sting of betrayal still burned. They'd excluded me from their biggest day. Ethan had agreed, yet now he was the one reaching out, not with entitlement, but raw desperation. A war raged inside me, anger versus compassion, revenge versus support. I remembered Susan's words. "They thought you didn't matter." If I abandoned Ethan, I'd confirm that. But if I helped, I'd prove my worth wasn't in a badge or a seat, it was in me. I didn't sleep that night. I wrote 2 columns on a paper, reasons to walk away and reasons to help. In the first, I listed betrayal, humiliation, exploitation, dismissal. In the second, just one line, because I'm me, and I don't want to become as bitter as they are. I stared at that line, and I knew my choice. The next morning, I called Ethan back. He picked up instantly. I kept it short. "Let's meet. You need a plan, not just complaints." On the other end, I heard him choke up, then whisper a thank you. They say forgiveness isn't a gift for others. It's a gift for yourself. I didn't believe that until the evening I walked into Ethan's tiny apartment with a hot pizza in hand and a printed list of job openings in my bag. His place was dim, lit only by a faint desk lamp. Gone was the golden boy aura. Ethan sat slumped at the table, hair messy, eyes shadowed from sleeplessness. When I set the pizza down, he looked up, startled. You actually came? I thought you'd never want to see me again." I took a deep breath, keeping my voice steady. "You said you needed help, so I'm here. But I didn't bring money. I brought something else." I pulled out the papers, a list of companies hiring, from data analysts to project managers. Ethan stared, his eyes red, as if he couldn't believe it. I won't lie, anger still simmered. The revised guest list, my isolation at the wedding still haunted me. But sitting before me wasn't the accomplice anymore, just a broken, lost man. And I knew if I turned away, I'd lose the last soft part of myself. We started small. I opened my laptop, told Ethan to pull up his old CV. When I saw his generic resume, I shook my head. "You list too many vague achievements. Employers want specifics, not just stories." He sat quietly as I edited line by line, adding details about his projects and skills. I explained like a patient teacher. At one point, Ethan gave a bitter laugh. "You're more like a career coach than a sister." I replied, "Then you're lucky. At least someone's still here with you." The room fell silent. I saw Ethan's eyes glisten, but he quickly turned away. In the days that followed, I became his reluctant ally. Mornings, I texted, "Which companies did you apply to today?" Evenings, I called, "Practice your interview answers." Some days, Ethan sighed. "Sis, I feel like a failure, from the top to rock bottom in months." I said gently. Failure doesn't kill you, arrogance does. You're learning to start over. That's not weakness, it's courage. Slowly, I saw him change. From listless, he started grooming himself, ironing shirts, even smiling again. It wasn't just the pizza or CV. It was knowing someone believed in him when he didn't believe in himself. Then the day came. On a Monday morning, as I headed to work, my phone rang. Ethan's voice broke with laughter. Claire, they hired me. A startup in Cambridge. Pay's not like before, but it's enough, and they trust me to lead a new team. I stopped on the street, tears welling up unaware. His voice trembled with newfound confidence. He continued, You know, it wasn't money that saved me. It was your belief. Without you, I'd have given up. Those words pierced my heart. All the months I felt invisible, all the wounds from their indifference, were soothed by one honest sentence. I didn't say much, just whispered, Good, Ethan. Now prove you're worth that trust. That night, we celebrated in my small apartment. No lavish party, just cheap wine and takeout. But Ethan's smile was genuine, one I hadn't seen since we were kids playing in the backyard. He raised his glass, his eyes full of gratitude. Claire, I owe you more than you know, and this time I won't let you down. I shook my head. I didn't need repayment. What I needed was this moment, knowing my worth wasn't in the check I took back, but in a heart big enough to forgive, even after betrayal. Forgiveness isn't weakness. It's the strength to heal, to prove you won't become bitter from others' wounds. That night, as Ethan sat across from me, I knew I'd stepped out of the victim role. I was the one choosing, and I chose to save the human part of myself. If someone had told me months ago I'd sit at a family table again, I'd have laughed bitterly. I'd sworn never to return after what they did. But life is ironic. When Ethan landed his new job, he begged, Sis, come to dinner with us. We need to sit down, not to talk about money, but about us. I hesitated long. Part of me wanted to refuse outright, but I realized some battles can't be avoided, only faced. That evening, I dressed simply, a beige sweater and jeans. I didn't want to show off, just be myself. Stepping through the old house's door, memories of being dismissed flooded back. The familiar smell of cooking, the long wooden table, the worn chairs, everything was the same, except my heart. Dad sat at the table's head, unusually quiet. Mom bustled with food but avoided my eyes. Ethan sat across, and as I sat down, he put down his fork, looking at everyone. I have something to say. The air froze. I saw my parents tense. Ethan took a breath, his voice shaky but clear. If I'm still here today, it's because of Claire. She pulled me out of the pit, not with money, but with belief. And from now on, no one, not even you, Mom and Dad, gets to treat her like an outsider. The room was silent. I heard the clocks ticking. Dad bowed his head, his gnarled hands clenching. Mom looked at me, her eyes full of shame, her lips trembling but wordless. In that moment, I realized some apologies don't need words. A bowed head, a regretful glance, they were enough. I smiled, not a victor's smile, but one of someone who'd finally set down a burden. I didn't need them to grovel. Ethan's action was the recognition I'd always wanted. Dinner passed slowly. Mom quietly added food to my plate. Dad nodded silently as I talked about work. No more snide remarks or cold stares. Just an ordinary dinner. But to me, extraordinary. As it ended, I set down my wineglass, looking around. I saw the cracks still there. We couldn't go back, couldn't erase the wounds, but we could start again, with truth, compassion, and the boundaries I'd set. I raised my glass, my voice calm but firm. I don't need the seat you denied me before. I've built my own table, and at my table, I'll always invite those who value me. Ethan looked at me, eyes red. My parents stayed silent, but I knew they understood. That night, back in my apartment, I sat by the window, the city's light stretching like a golden ribbon. I realized the greatest treasure wasn't an apology, it was finding myself again. Forgiveness isn't forgetting. It's facing the wound, acknowledging it, and choosing to move forward without letting it turn you bitter. I was once excluded from my family's table, but that rejection built my own, where I decide who deserves a seat. Closing this journey, I learned my greatest value wasn't what I lost, but what I reclaimed in myself. The limited access guest badge once broke me, but it became the turning point to stand up, demand fairness, and affirm that self-respect is never for trade. I realized forgiveness isn't weakness, it's the strength to heal, to prove love is greater than betrayal. Ethan changed, my parents learned respect, and I found my own table, reserved for those who truly value me. If this story touched your heart, leave a comment to let me know I'm not alone in seeking fairness and family. Don't forget to follow my channel for more emotional family stories, where we can all learn to forgive more, be stronger, and love ourselves better.